part of what we're excited about as a team inside of Google Research is to be able to, co-design our underlying hardware architecture with the ML engineers on a day-to-day basis, test things through simulation and emulation in our labs, and then settle on, what is the next real thing that makes sense, and then try to sell John on putting it into the roadmap and our Synaptics relationship as where we might go next year and so forth.
My name is Junko Yoshida. I'm the editor-in-chief of Junko's Tech Probe, and now I have begun a new YouTube channel called Junko's Talk to Us. This is actually part 2 of the Edge AI series. I'm working with Synaptics, and we've got part 1 done. And part 2, we are inviting back John Weil, Vice President of IoT and Edge AI Processing Business at Synaptics. Hi, John.
Hi, Junko. Thanks for having us.
You're welcome. And then our, I should say, real guest is Billy Rutledge, Director of Systems Research in Google Research. Hi, Billy.
Hi, Junko. Thanks for inviting me. Happy to be here.
Thank you. As a reporter who covers a lot on the chips, don't really have much chance to talk to Google. And I was always curious about why hyperscalers are interested in the edge. I thought hyperscalers actually belong to the data centers. And of course, they probably have a peripheral interest, but it did not really make sense to me that what's in it for hyperscalers, like Google, to get interested in Edge AI? Why Edge?
Yeah, great question. And I guess to unpack that, we should go back in time a little bit. I've been heading up this team in Google Research since 2015. And at the time, inside the company, we had a lot of investment in domain-specific architectures. And as you describe, we were working on a lot of hyperscalers to power some of the new experiences, new algorithms, new ideas in the data center. And that was our TPU program. But at the same time, we had a smaller group that was considering what might be possible on the edge with a very small version of that same idea, not the same architecture, but the same idea. What could we do to enable a new generation of devices that could foster more amazing user experiences by bringing architectures out to enable some of the AI models that we were exploring inside of Google Research. So smaller convolutional neural networks, things like mobile nets and so forth. And that led to a program called the Edge TPU, which was meant to be a complement to our much larger, much more capable cloud hyperscaler programs. And with the Edge TPU, we created a research program called Coral.
Right.
And we brought Coral out in I think 2017 or 2018. But the purpose of that research program was to introduce this smaller domain-specific architecture to the world of mobile and edge and embedded systems developers and device makers, just to see what the level of interest might be and what sort of new devices and experiences we could open up to be sort of a complement to the cloud side services and infrastructure that we had at the time.
Right. So, but between then, we're talking about the 2017, 2018 until now, there's like, I don't know, several years, right? So there are certain things that you have learned and certain things that you thought you could do better. I'm not sure. I'm just speculating here. But let's dive in.
Yeah. So as mentioned, we released Coral, I want to say 6 or 7 years ago at this point, and it was a research initiative. And again, we were exploring what's possible through very open means by making the Edge TPU available in a lot of different hardware form factors. So we thought we would focus on form factors that were easy for device makers to integrate. So we did SOM modules, USB stick, PCIe cards, and so forth, all the way down to the edge CPU itself as a multi-chip module that you could
Ah,
solder into your own design. We had a lot of interest in Coral. We sold so many units that it became a little bit overwhelming for our small research team. And because of the appetite, because of the interest, because of the demand, we decided to graduate that product portfolio out into industry and made a partnership with ASUS Tech out of Taiwan, who had
yep.
been a hardware partner of Google for quite some time, responsible for Chromebooks and Chromeboxes and earlier Chromecast devices and such. And the ASUS Tech IoT business unit has been able to continue to meet the demand, offering it as an enterprise level product globally, handling production and distribution and sales and support. But our research team actually learned quite a bit from that program. First, there's a lot of demand for edge computing and edge AI in particular. A lot of device makers across different industries, ranging from healthcare to transportation to consumer devices, really wanted to add eyes and ears, human sensing capabilities into their devices to foster a more interesting or seamless user interaction between humans and the compute systems. Another thing that we learned with the Edge TPU and Coral was uh, I think we kind of set a benchmark. We sort of set a standard for others to strive to. And we wanted to kind of ignite interest in this space and invite others to participate. And so we saw a lot of other companies began to make embedded AI accelerators, NPUs, and trying to achieve our same benchmark, the same number of operations per second at the same power budget. And they got there, and there's a lot of offering in the market today. But
Right.
what we observed with that is it's become kind of a tangled mess for developers. If you're trying to build an AI model and bring it down to one of these edge devices, boy, you really have to jump through a lot of hoops with domain-specific languages, different compiler tool chains. Really kind of have to have a PhD in compiler technology to make your model actually run the way that you want it to. And that's multiplied across the different number of architectures that you want to support. Offering a better set of tools, a better set of technologies where everyone could participate and try to drive a single standard forward is kind of what we've come back to. And that's what brings us to the program that we have today called Kelvin. And we can say more about that, but that was really the primary outcome of Coral, was that we wanted to scale, go bigger, reach more broadly across the ecosystem of ML developers, and offer an architecture and a standard that would help be a catalyst and accelerate edge AI for everyone.
That's interesting. What you just described is really no different from what the this whole electronics industry has gone through with the initial stage of not so smart IoT industry, right? Because it was also fragmentation was the part of the problem, but everybody had its own good idea and went ahead with it. And but in the end, I think it became a really tangled mess, as you said. I can understand from the high level what Google wants to do to help the industry to actually to flourish this the edge AI market. You do need some kind of a rule of engagement, but also making sure that the tools and the technology to go with it, it's easier to use. Now, that's a very, altruistic the purpose. But what about like for Google? What is your commercial motivation to go down deep with the edge?
Yeah, I think that's still a research work stream for us. We're still trying to figure that out. But at the same time that we made Coral available and the Edge TPU available, back in 2015 into 2016, along that same time frame, going into 2017, Google Research released the paper on the transformer architecture, which sort
Ah,
of ignited this massive interest in large language models, and I think we all know that story
yeah.
um, quite well at this point. And our thesis around having edge AI components that could be sort of this front end, the human-computer interface into Google cloud-based services is still the case. It's just that the cloud-based services are now large language models. In the case of Google, it's Gemini and having that Gemini experience. And I think we've progressed to the point where we're beginning to unlock the real value of edge AI, and that's being the front end to the larger, more sophisticated foundation models, large language models. Some of the announcements that you saw at Google I/O recently around thinking models. So how can we streamline human interaction into these larger, more complicated cloud site models? And we believe the answer is uh, also through AI, but smaller systems, lighter weight systems, things that can be on you and around you and really make it easier for users to interact with the overall system altogether.
If I sum up what you just said, is that the hyperscalers, especially Google, as they innovate with their AI models, they really need to have, I think you use the term, the eyes and ears on the edge, right? And just like all those consumer device companies are putting eyes and ears sensors at the edge, Google would like to have access to the eyes and ears. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think we, maybe just say it a little more um, clearly. It's really the user context, the ambient context. What
Ah,
situation is a person in? What do they see? What do they hear? Are they speaking with someone? Who are they speaking with? Are they on the go? Are they moving? Are they on a bicycle? You can get a lot of information about the user context just from capturing these sort of ambient signals through AI models. One of our goals today, as we look at bringing this capability into wearable devices, to make it easier to capture that ambient context from the eyes of the user and the ears of the user, um, is also to just make it easier for the user to interact with the world and leave the smartphone in their pocket or their backpack.
right. All right. I'm gonna go to John. I think the chip companies have their own reasons to be at the edge, because that's really we're talking about volume market, and we're talking about enabling a lot of edges from where you sit. What do you think that hyperscalers want from chip companies like yours?
We as an industry have built layers of compute for decades, right? So when you have hyperscalers with large compute, and then you have your laptop or desktop machines with some amount of compute, and then now our mobile phones have another bit of compute. And each one of those steps, you're moving, say, closer to the human, right? Understanding more about the environment. And for semiconductor companies like Synaptics, we obviously make chips that are close to the human. But as you move to deeply embedded devices, we're adding another layer of compute. So it doesn't really matter what that widget is. It could be, say, a body-worn electronic of some type, but that body-worn electronic now can maybe bridge to a mobile phone or bridge to a computer and bridge to the cloud. And so as these large AI models have different layers of compute as you go from the cloud all the way down to the individual,
Yep.
There's different contextual awareness that you can gather at each of those stages, right? So imagine running some model in the cloud, some model on a PC or a mobile product, some smaller model on a deeply embedded device close to the human. Each of those devices can infer and make decisions about the surroundings differently. Our research is around how do we bring that intelligence to price, performance, power consumption setup that allows you to open up new markets.
Yeah. So, Billy, how do you expect that this new relationship with chip companies like Synaptics, how do you think that relationship develop differently from what you have already experienced with the running successful Coral project?
Hmm. Yeah, great question. Our research leadership challenged us with, moving away from a proprietary, confidential, domain-specific architecture, and making that silicon ourselves and trying to sell it and distribute it, to kind of level up and go bigger and go more broad. And so I think the task put upon us was, how can you take the learnings from this and 10x it, right? We're a research group and we're trying to prove what's possible with this technology. And we've realized that to achieve that level of scale, we need great partners and we need open source technology. So
Mhm.
open standards, open source, we believe can let us interact better with academics, with industry, with people that want to advance this computer science domain with us. And then in order to achieve scale and reach with devices that we think would be interesting to industry customers or consumers, we need to have good silicon partnerships where we can bring our IP, our domain-specific architectures as a building block or a component into more complex systems that are well suited for those classes of devices. And so our intent is to continue to drive open standards. Today we're using RISC-V for our hardware architecture work, and Google participates in RISC-V. We've been a key part of a lot of the different extensions that have been ratified in the last couple of years, specifically around the math required to do machine learning. And we're bringing those extensions into reality with these reference designs that we're building today, our architectures. And then finding the right partners like Synaptics that can help us turn them into real shipping silicon that would be useful with all the other IPs and capabilities that a company like Synaptics brings to the table.
How did you get to pick Synaptics? Did you actually know John personally, or did you have any relationship with the Synaptics at all?
No, great question. No, I've never met John before our relationship. So he was introduced to me after we got started. And he's been a great partner, and I think we've done amazing work in the last year, and we're excited about some of the announcements coming up later. But we chose Synaptics because of well, a few things. One, history. Google Research has worked with Synaptics to explore system designs in the past, and I think we've had a really great relationship with them on earlier projects. So we kind of know Synaptics already, and we know that we can work with them, move quickly. But also Synaptics has specialization in smaller systems, embedded systems, low power designs, things for laptops, mobiles, wearables in the future. And we wanted to partner with a company that was capable of bringing our IP into a system design that would be ready for these industries, for these classes of devices. I think it was 2 years ago, we touched base in a regular meeting with Synaptics leadership at Embedded World. And we talked about what we're doing, where we're going, and we just, it sort of clicked, and we realized, gosh, this would be great if we did it together. And so just through additional conversations, we decided to pursue it, and we've been really happy with that choice.
When companies get together, make an announcement, they have partnership. There has to be some kind of agreed upon mission, right? That what is the Google's and Synaptics common mission for this project?
That is a good question. I don't think we've actually put on paper an agreed mission that we're marketing as a collaboration. But if I think about it, I think it's to unlock and enable new AI use cases with IoT and embedded devices. We're bringing the domain-specific architectures and open tools that can allow the entire ecosystem and industry to participate. And then I believe, Synaptics is sort of taking that and commercializing it and making it real for the world to use. And so as Google Research is exploring the next steps that we take with AI and AI experiences, having this partnership to make it real for others is kind of the mission that we want with Synaptics relationship.
Is this relationship, is it, shelf life? I mean, it's like this is the partnership that lasts next 5 years or 3 years. Is there something like that?
We intend for it to be a long-term relationship, provided that John and team can put up with our madness. I think we often introduce all kinds of crazy ideas, and part of John's responsibility is to make it real, and research ideas and then crazy ideas don't always fit well with developing a real product and taking it to market and getting it ready on time with a real schedule. But yes, we intend for it to be a long-term relationship, and we have discussed several iterations ahead on the horizon with the work that we've started.
When I talked
Yeah.
to John, John was kind of very humble about this. Well, if you ask Billy, Billy is going to call, Synaptics a production partner, right? That doesn't sound really exciting to me. So, John, explain to me that beyond being a production partner, what do you expect from Google?
Crazy ideas, like continuing
Oh,
to
that's a good one. Yeah.
continuing to push the boundaries. I mean, that, in our last conversation, I talked about, you know, where the research is done, right? And a lot of the advancement, not just at Google, but at other companies as well, is in this cloud side where we have large amounts of compute. We can look at the problem. And then over time, and Billy's team is a prime example of this, going from their original cloud hyperscaler processors to the TPU Coral kind of system onto where we are with Kelvin today, and what Synaptics and Google will be able to do with a roadmap of new parts coming out. We're taking, those crazy ideas from some number of years ago, and we're finding ways to repurpose those ideas into a much more cost-effective kind of product that opens up new markets at the edge. And
Yeah.
I mean, that's where relationships like this and a multi-year horizon really start to pay off. Is me personally, I don't want Billy's team to stop being creative. I mean, my job is to parse through the creativity and come up with some things that we know, embedded customers are going to massively benefit from, and help drive that into market in a way that can be implemented and supported over some period of time. I don't think it's one and done or two and done. It's going to be hopefully multiple years of new ideas that we can take to market together.
Interesting. So, Billy, do you have any plans to work with other chip companies?
We're excited to work with any chip company that wants to explore our open IP. Yes, we would be happy to do that based on our overarching goal to have broad reach into all industries, all geographies. But our primary focus today is with Synaptics and trying to champion this, demonstrate what's possible with this relationship, bring great products to market as a result. And I expect others will be interested and want to follow and participate, and we hope that's the case and we encourage it. But today, Synaptics is really the kind of the poster child partner that we're using to showcase our work.
I can't really recall that similar relationship, sort of partnership between the hyperscalers and chip companies. Synaptics and the Google is one prime example, as you noted. I think there is some kind of press release around the Meta and ARM.
I guess what's different here between our work with Synaptics and the industry and that sort of arrangement is everything that we're doing is open source and license free. And so we believe by following open hardware paradigms, we can get others to participate and contribute to our designs and our goals, as well as take it and use it in an open way.
Right.
Speed of execution as well,
Yeah.
right? Like this is a little different in those others because it is open hardware. From a roadmap point of view, we can try and implement things at a much faster pace than some of the proprietary technologies that are out there, even in other partnerships.
I see. Okay, good. So this is a good segue to move on to the open source stuff. I think to be really successful in the open source community, there are few factors are involved. One is who is actually really heading up this open source project, who is a big, not only cheerleaders, but also herding the cats might be the better way to put it. But you need a good leader. But also, as John pointed out, in a previous conversation I had with him, he said you do need a commercial success. He was referring to Linux community would not be what it is today if we didn't have Linus and if we didn't have Red Hat. That was the example he gave me. And I'm kind of curious, this is a question to both of you. Where do you think that within the edge AI community, how do you envision open source business is going to flourish? Any clues who's going to be a leader in this area?
Yeah, well, there's a lot in that statement slash
Yeah.
question that you just
Sorry.
drafted. But maybe to back up a little bit, your comment about open source being hard and requiring a good leader and someone to stand behind it is absolutely true. We've had open source efforts in many things, from our Geo and Maps platform to Android platform to Chrome platform, and we've had a lot of developer-facing tools that we've open sourced and part of the underlying platforms themselves. And I think Google as a company has been a really strong leader in driving open source programs. But to your point, it does require a dedicated team and dedicated interest to stay on top of it, to evangelize it. But I believe larger open source effort that we're really behind here is open hardware, and that's part of the RISC-V community, which I think is very actively led by RISC-V International. And
Yep.
companies like Google are participating and giving concrete examples of implementing those open standards and open specs with the type of work that we're doing today and making available to Synaptics and others. And so I think being a part of the larger global initiative around open hardware is the main thing for us.
Yeah.
And participating in driving new standards, implementing those standards, showing the right way to use them, and then working with companies like Synaptics to enable new products, new business opportunities around that work in a way where the open hardware is appreciated, and they're the right motivators in those relationships to make it work.
Yeah. What do you say, John? When you guys getting into the edge AI, you made the case of the importance of open hardware. So how do you envision that you're going to make this a success, real, rousing success?
I think it's the same thing we talked about in the prior episode. Like, if you look at how Red Hat commercialized a lot of the Linux goodness, Synaptics' desire is to try to take the open hardware and software and drive a data point, almost like a long-term support, a specific implementation of it
Yeah.
that will be there for some number of years. We're really focused on the productization side of it.
Sure.
And contributing back, of course. So, still contributing to both the hardware and the software as much as we can. But in using that analogy that we used before,
Yeah.
we want to be that kind of commercial user of it that is showing practical implementations of the upstream open source content. So in our particular case, we're working on how do we implement that hardware with other hardware and create a product with it. Okay.
Yeah.
Just like the Linux community at Red Hat would take upstream Linux and wrap other things around it to produce a Red Hat Enterprise Linux edition. We're kind
Right.
of, that analogy kind of fits in the same way. We're wrapping things around it that customers also need to be able to have a full product.
Yeah.
And then on the software side, we're doing the same thing, but we're working with Billy's team on how do we reduce fragmentation, I hope, in the long run, and use various compiler technologies that can deal with diverse models, diverse hardware, and make it easier on customers to implement things.
Right.
Today we work with a number of universities to explore new hardware designs, new circuit designs, things that could help run AI models more efficiently or with higher accuracy. But to be able to bring all the hardware designs together, get them into a core design, test them, benchmark them, get them into a commercially viable chassis, do the DV testing around that, take it to market. I mean, there's a lot of components to making hardware work that I believe just makes it much more difficult than an open source software project. And so I think we're pioneering something new here, kind of for the first time with Synaptics, being able to bring all this research around AI together, getting it into a methodology to make it commercially available.
Great. All right. So actually, the question that I didn't ask during the course of this conversation is there has been talks about Kelvin and there are IPs that Google is developing. Tell me a little bit more of those things coming down from Google to the silicon level.
Mhm. So Kelvin, Kelvin, like the temperature scale, Kelvin, is the name of our research program. It's what we started as a follow-on to Coral. With Kelvin, we're trying to achieve that vision that I mentioned earlier. How can we go bigger? How can we go more broadly?
Right.
And we shifted from proprietary domain-specific architectures into open source hardware design using RISC-V. I
Yeah.
think that was the big shift
Big
going
shift.
from Coral to Kelvin.
Yeah.
And then, having a voice in the RISC-V community, trying to help shape the standards for the different extensions that are required to do AI operations in hardware, and then actually going the next level and implementing them into a real design. And that's what Kelvin is. It's an implementation of RISC-V standards. And we've
Uh,
come up with a base design for an ML accelerator for 32-bit low power embedded systems as our first reference. And
okay.
so that module, that IP block, that component, that NPU base design called Kelvin is what we've partnered with Synaptics to bring into their system designs. And so a lot of our work with John and team over the last, I don't know, six to 12 months has been how do we take our RISC-V design and integrate it with the proprietary capabilities that Synaptics brings to offer sort of this open source, standards compatible front end into the
Yes.
NPU, but let a company like Synaptics specialize it for the things that they do well and offer a product to market that makes sense for the industries that they want to cover.
Interesting. Anything to add, John, to this?
And that there's a roadmap. I think
Ah,
Billy, so we've implemented version 1,
We have implemented.
and there is coming soon. Not to pre-announce anything today, but I think customers will be very excited later this year to see some of that hard work coming to market. The taking that open hardware to the speed of execution, like Billy was talking about, there's several things in the pipeline that we're already mutually are aware of, and how we kind of freeze those. Unlike the open source software world where things are kind of continuously moving, we have to kind of pick an aspect and say, okay, that's opening up a new channel for customers. That's opening up a new capability for customers, and then integrate that with some of the Synaptics know-how. So it's pretty fun because we're looking at, like, you got all these different ways of solving an AI use case, and you've got different compute elements and how you can do that. And so what we've been pretty successful at is working with Billy's team to integrate the work and know-how that they have with some stuff that, kind of magic or secret sauce that we have going on, and still give customers that that feeling of open hardware, but able to do some pretty extensive things with it. So our mission is to take that and drive it to a power, price, performance aspect that you can do a lot more than what you thought you could do in the past.
wow.
In this relationship, as we're following open standards and open hardware practices, it's not just about implementing the RISC-V spec, for the scalar core, the vector core, or the upcoming matrix core. It's also about tailoring the implementation of those specs to specific use cases and models. And I think within Google Research, we really feel like we're driving what's coming next with ML models and have been on the front edge of that since the beginning. And we're able to tailor Kelvin to be specific to different models that we're designing and experimenting with inside of Google Research, and to be able to rapidly explore changes to that Kelvin design and see how well it adheres to different model architecture, optimizations, and strategies, and then be able to lock on things that we think might be a really interesting user experience, is another part of the magic here, I think, that makes this relationship really special.
Yeah.
So, John said roadmap, which made me think, yes, oh my gosh, there's a tremendous roadmap ahead. We have all kinds of ML experiments happening every day. And part of what we're excited about as a team inside of Google Research is to be able to, co-design our underlying hardware architecture with the ML engineers on a day-to-day basis, test things through simulation and emulation in our labs, and then settle on, what is the next real thing that makes sense, and then try to sell John on putting it into the roadmap and our Synaptics relationship as where we might go next year and so forth.
Yeah.
But as we look at embedded systems being the front end for these more complex AI experiences, we call that the neural cascade, having smaller models kind of be the front end with human that cascade tokens and information back to larger models for that distributed machine learning experience from edge to cloud.
Yeah.
And one of the other topics that we're researching in that space is not only how to enable hardware to be efficient and running these models and providing the right experience on the edge, but also as you're capturing and acting on this user level information, what a user sees, what a user hears, it can be highly sensitive. And so
Exactly.
being able to introduce privacy mechanisms, security mechanisms to enable privacy rather, is also really an important part of our research.
Yeah, so this is going to be not in the first generation product, but you're talking about there's something you're researching, and this will be added privacy security add-on, or how to explain this?
You work through ideas, and then you have to figure out how to productize those ideas, right? From Synaptics' point of view, even the current generation of stuff that we're doing with Billy's team, we're wrapping security around that. But as I think anybody who's good in the security and privacy kind of space here, that you can't bolt that kind of stuff on. Right. It has to be kind of designed in day one into the product. And that's some of what Synaptics know-how, what we're doing already today. We've been working on secure inference for many years now, actually. And so we're bringing a layer of security to it. What Billy's team, and while we were talking about roadmap earlier, is doing is taking that another notch up with some of the integration that they're talking about and what we'll be able to do. But that will come over time. But continuing to embed, I don't know, Billy, you can correct me on how to phrase this, but continuing to embed security into the compute pipeline and like how we're processing information and how we can guarantee to our mutual end customers that information is protected.
Yes, and I think what the research we're doing now that we'll see in the future is how to bring that all the way down into the hardware at the lowest level. So how do we have stronger guarantees around memory level safety, isolation, compartmentalization in hardware to really protect highly sensitive user data while it's in rest or in compute on the device itself.
The reason why I forgot to ask about privacy and security is you usually take it for granted, because if it is edge, things stay at the edge, so you don't have to worry about privacy. That's a regular kind of narrative we, the amateur reporters, write about. But what you're saying is actually, in order to understand what's going on, the eyes and ears of the real world, you actually have the responsibility. Whatever that you have learned at the edge will be somehow reflected in your next generation research. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think as we advance new experiences with AI on the edge, we want to provide the right tools and mechanisms for companies like Synaptics to offer stronger and more capable security guarantees around how the compute works in the underlying architecture.
Yeah.
And a lot of that can be built on the transparency of open source and the trust that comes from that through having other third parties evaluate it, as well as different capabilities that we can add into hardware that we're experimenting now that can be combined with the neural processing unit. So it's an active research work stream. I think we'll have more to say about it in the future, but it's something that we realize that we want to spend more time on as we advance the roadmap.
That's fantastic. I mean, it's sort of like we're talking about really the next level design process. You're looking at from the research level model creation to the chips. I mean, you're actually spanning the whole process, right?
It really is about that co-design, software and hardware co-designed together for a specific domain, in this case, machine learning. Yeah.
Excellent. All right. I learned a lot. Thank you so much for coming to the show, and we'll stay in touch. Thank you.
Thank you, Junko.